Alright, moving on to 8. You're supposed to find the average rate of change be from 2 to 6 years. Well, to figure out average rate of change, you gotta take your two row values here. These are points, if you were to graph them. And you have to get the change in the function value from 16,000 to $6,553.60. And you take that number and you put it over the change from 2 to 6, which is 4. And so when you do the subtraction, you have to do the 6,001 minus the 16,001. You get negative 9,446.4. And then you have to divide it by the 4. That's the change in the t value, the x value here. And when you do that, you get A. All these other ones are just like mistakes. Typical calculation mistakes. Moving on to 9, describe the pattern using function notation. In class, we've been writing our functions like this. Well, you notice these here don't exactly match that, but C matches it most closely. And if you actually were to combine these, so it was just one number with the exponent, you would have 5 to the n, which is C. A is if you're like adding 5 each time, or you're adding 1 each time and start at 5. This would be adding 5 every time. And this last one here is just like whatever number to the 5th power. It's not even close. 10. Depending on what version of this paper you have, you'll either have a correct answer or none of them will have the correct answer. If you have C as a chart there, then you don't have a correct answer. A doesn't have an x-intercept. B isn't exponential. So our two clues, exponential and x-intercept of 2, 0. So those are out. D has a y-intercept of 2, which is not what we're looking for. There is the x-intercept's not at 2. C, if you have the table, does have a x-intercept of 2, 0, but this function is not exponential. If you have the version of the test that has this equation here, that is the right answer. You can actually plug in this point. 2 in for x, that's going to give you 2 squared, minus a 4 gives you 0, which matches with that point there, 2, 0. 11. So, and when you're trying to figure this out, remember when we would write our function, or explicit function, using this? Well, okay, we're adding 1 each time, so you're going to have 1 in front of n minus 1, and then you have to add your initial value. Well, this is like what we would, sorry, that's messed up. When we would write it, we would have like 1 times, man, I totally wrote that wrong, sorry guys. We would have our common difference in front of n minus 1, and then we add 4 there on the end, and that actually works here, but notice how it's got a little bit of shift difference. None of these have this n minus 1 term, and you'll see that a lot, and that's because here it's starting at a little bit different pattern. But if you look at D, D is the closest match. Instead of having n minus 1, it just has n, which is going to be your match here. All these other ones have 4 and 1 in the wrong spot. Moving on to 12, the recursive one. I hope you guys are pretty familiar with this. Initial value, so a sub 1 is 13. This one is subtracting 2 every time. So when you got your recursive function, you got a sub n equals a sub n minus 1 minus 2. And that matches B. 13. How would you get the next term in the sequence? Well, the pattern is times by 4 every time. And so you would multiply the previous term by 4. 14 was the domain of the sequence modeled. Again, this is like what numbers can you put into the function to get the result you're looking for. And this is a sequence, right? So this is like a number sequence like -3, -1, 1, 3, etc. Okay, it's a sequence like that, and it has a specific start value. And when you're trying to figure out what the number is based on the number in the sequence, you don't plug in decimal values, so we're not doing rationals. You don't plug in fractions to figure out the numbers in the sequence. You do put in integers, but you don't put in negative integers. Right? You don't plug in -1 to get the -1th term in the sequence. You just start at 0 or 1 and go from there. And so that's going to be A, the non-negative integers. And that's going to be up to 14.